Finally, a story about a motivational speaker. They're a special breed. They've got to have, well, a good personality, a message, communication skills, of course, and very often a personal story, inspiring story of overcoming the odds. St. Louisan John O'Leary has all of that and more. He has a book, podcasts, this year a PBS special. We'll catch up with him on all of that, but first the story he told to Ruth Ezell back in 2015.
In this photo of the O'Leary family of town and country, John O'Leary was about 3 years old. When John was 9, he spotted some older boys playing with matches and gasoline and decided to try it himself in his family's garage. You can imagine what happened next.
Burned on 100% of my body. 87% was third degree. And so they bring me into the hospital, and I remember laying there as a little boy. I caught myself on fire, I caught the house on fire, and I was sure I totally let my father down. So that was my thought, and you can imagine my surprise and relief when he comes in, and the first thing my dad says to me is how much he loves me and how proud he is of me, and so it changed the entire story thereafter.
John received an abundance of love, support, and encouragement from family, nurses, doctors, and friends. He would need it for the months of skin grafts and other procedures he would endure in the hospital. Word of John's accident quickly reached the ears of one of his heroes, St. Louis Cardinals announcer Jack Buck. The legendary broadcaster found out where the young patient was being treated and paid him a surprise visit.
I loved him, but I'd never met him before. So he walks into this space, and now it's not 1120 KMOX, it's bedroom 406 at the Burn Center. He's sitting next to me. I kind of sense a presence. And then he speaks into my darkness, and what he says very firmly was, "Kid, wake up. You are going to live. You are going to survive. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. And when you get out of here, we are going to celebrate. We'll call it John O'Leary Day at the ballpark." And then I remember he said something like, "Kid, are you listening?" And tied down, swollen shut. I remember nodding gently. And then my hero says back, "Good, keep fighting. See you soon." And that promise of visiting this little boy was made and kept and delivered upon for the next 5 months and really for the rest of my life. An incredible untold story of a guy from our community who stood up and served, did it quietly, and in doing so really radically changed my life. So Ruth, my oldest boy is named Jack, and we named him after Jack Buck. So when we come to the games, we make a point out of parking on this side of the stadium so we can walk right past and point out this man who touched our life so dearly and so deeply.
O'Leary explained how Buck persuaded him to relearn handwriting in spite of his hand's deformities.
When I was first burned and out of the hospital, what he learned is that I could not use my hands at all. So Jack, thinking the way that only Jack Buck could have done, dreams outside of the box and asks himself what more he can do. He sends me a baseball signed by Ozzie Smith, and below the ball was a note from Jack Buck, and it says, "Kid, if you want a second baseball, all you have to do is send a thank you letter to the man who signed the first one."
And you did.
I did, but he knew I could not write, but he also knew the value of bribery, the value of encouraging a little guy to get what he really wanted, which was not to go back to school, but was a second baseball. So I write this note to Ozzie, mail it off, and 2 days later, I get a second baseball from my hero that says, "Kid, if you want a third baseball." So I write another note, mail it off. A few days later, Ruth, I get a fourth baseball, a fifth baseball, a sixth baseball. By the end of 1987, Jack Buck sends 60 baseballs to a little boy in a wheelchair, without hands, with no chance, teaching him how to ride again, transforming forever my life.
They remained friends until Buck's death in 2002. O'Leary's life changed for the better in other ways. The summer following his release from the hospital, John and his 5 siblings were taken by their mom and dad on vacation to Colorado. Denny and Susan O'Leary had always wanted to climb a mountain. Taking a cue from the adage, "Life's too short," they made their wish come true with family in tow in 1988. Several years ago, Denny and Susan O'Leary wrote a book about their experiences with their son's accident and recovery and the community's response. It was illuminating for John to read about how his situation affected his parents. He wasn't the only one impressed by their story.
One of the groups that read their book originally was a group of Girl Scouts out in West County. So this little group asked me to speak to their school. It's going to be 3 Girl Scouts in the first row. It's 3rd graders. And I am so nervous before sharing this story. I get sick in the parking lot before walking in to talk about this story with these little girls. But in leaving that day and in hugging these little ones, I realized the calling to get over myself, get past the fear, and to share this story as it ignites hope and inspiration in the lives of others. Look at our country, look at this stadium, look at your friends and family members around you. We are fortunate.
That talk before a group of grade schoolers evolved into a career as a motivational speaker.
Whatever, my friends, we choose to focus on will grow around us. If you focus on the negativity, watch out because it's coming. If you focus on the possibility and the beauty of tomorrow and how it starts today, watch out because it's on, it's coming, hang on.
O'Leary has shared his story with 500,000 people and counting around the world. This 2014 appearance at the Edward Jones Dome was before a convention of the home, bath, and body products company, Scentsy. Finally, John O'Leary decided it was time for him to write a book. It took a few tries, but what he ended up with convinced Simon & Schuster to sign him on with its new publishing unit, North Star Way.
I'm thrilled to be signed by them and looking forward to the book coming out next year.
His book did come out, On Fire, The 7 Choices to Ignite a Radically Inspired Life. And in June, his PBS Pledge special went on the air.
What are kind of the 2 or 3 impacts that they're really going to see in their life?
Well, the very first thing they're going to notice immediately is how profoundly relevant and important their life is.
John O'Leary visited our studios to do some promotional spots for the special and talked about how things have been going since our story a couple of years ago.
The book has gone on to sell a couple 100,000 copies in 15 different languages, touching and elevating lives around the world. So apparently the book On Fire is not just a book about John O'Leary, but really a book about life.
Yeah, people relate to this. They must be relating to this story. It must resonate. And yet very few people have gone through exactly what you went through, right?
Correct. You know, when they first published the book, there was a picture of me on the front of it. So it says On Fire, and there's a picture of me kind of looking tough. So I sent back an email saying that's the wrong cover. The book's not about me, and the cover most certainly should not be about me. It's about the community. It's about ordinary siblings and parents and doctors and nurses and custodians and baseball announcers and human beings rolling up their sleeves, doing the best work they can to serve someone else, a cause greater than themselves. And I think that is a story, in particular in our marketplace today, that connects with all of us. Like we long to see heroes, to see examples of people not just wearing capes that can fly around, but people who wear stethoscopes and people who work in school buildings and people who make a difference by being who they are, serving someone greater than themselves.
You're doing a podcast as well, and now this PBS special, so you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I'm a father of 4, so I always start at home. I'm married, I have 4 kids. I'm a proud St. Louis guy. And as a guy who travels a lot, I could live anywhere in the country, and I choose St. Louis because it chose me first. I feel so blessed to have the support that we have received from our community.
You're in the motivational, inspirational business. You're not the only guy in that business. I just wonder from a marketing standpoint, how difficult is it to position yourself and to create a personality or a message that's maybe a little different from the other guy?
So the cool thing about our brand is we've never really had to create it. I am as authentic in front of you or a camera or my 4 kids making pancakes as I am in front of a stadium or a podcast microphone. So my brand is uniquely me, for better and for worse. And so for some, that's going to say, oh, we're just not interested. But for most of us, I think we're looking for evidence of authenticity. And we're looking for people who have courage to do things bigger than themselves. And our whole story, not just the one I tell through my book, but the stories we tell through our podcast are about individuals who are overcoming, people who are pointing the way forward, and people who are reminding the rest of us that in spite of some challenges around us, the best is yet to come, but hold on for the ride.